Right? So this is something to think about the moral hazards of what it means as we start to incorporate all of these things into our lives, and most of us sitting here are adults. Adults have the capacity to understand, at least adults in the past did. Nowadays, even adults are corrupted by many of these things. But adults generally have the capacity to understand what is beneficial and what is not beneficial for them. And they have the capacity to understand what is real and what is not real, and make sure that they pull away from certain things that are going to be harmful for them. Children do not have the ability to do this. And when they start to interact with these things, they are not able to distinguish between what is reality and what is not reality. And so you have this image here, which I put together just today from an image model that came out yesterday, 2 days ago, in which you have this picture of a manga in black and white on the left, and then on the right you have the colored representation of it. At one point in the past, about 4 days ago, in order to do this, you needed a human being. You needed a human being to take this image of a drawing in black and white, take markers and color and paint and color this. This used to be a profession 4 days ago called, I forget, the people who color, right? What is it called? Colorist. The colorist would be hired and paid to do this. The reason I picked this image is to show how advanced image generation has now become. 2 days ago, a model was released by Google that can now take this image from there, show me talking, and then instead of showing me, it'll show Sheikh Ali talking, giving this AI talk. Within 5 seconds, 10 seconds. It can now take an image that was created by a human being who had a job to do this, and now has replaced the job of this human being, and now able to immediately and instantly do this job. Now, this has happened across the industry, where now you have the ability to make images of anybody, anywhere, without their permission. You can have photography of any person taken in any location. And this is why many of the classical scholars of fiqh, they don't accept photographic evidence. In the past, and this was ajib, when you read it in the fatwa of scholars, that they wouldn't accept the evidence of photography or videography in a trial. Now you see the wisdom of the hikmah of the scholars, the fuqaha. Why did they say this? Because there was something they knew about what is coming. That now, anybody can be anywhere. You can say that the president was speaking to this other person, or you could have something that took place for real. And say, oh, actually that didn't happen. I wasn't even there. I wasn't talking to such and such person. That's AI. And you have this crisis of truth that's taking place all across the internet, where you're now no longer able to distinguish truth from reality. And this is fitan. This is the fitan of Dajjal, which you will not be able to tell the truth from reality. In addition, now what's happening with the introduction of the LLM? You have a collapse of attention. You have something called brain rot. And now this isn't specific to the AI and the LLM, of course. We've seen this happening with 10-second reels, 15-second reels of TikTok, where you have, a sister or brother going to, a cafe and saying, look, I'm eating at this cafe. Oh, support Palestine. The people of Gaza are starving. The brain rot that you see, a constant feed of just consumerism, a constant feed of just nonsense that you see, and it affects the brain. It affects our ability to concentrate. And now you have something called the Sora app, right? That OpenAI recently announced a model called Sora 2, which can create a video or 15-second AI generated video, and I didn't even want to put it here out of ta'zeem and adab for the masjid, because it's true brain rot. It just is a video that looks real of some stupid AI thing happening where a person's on a highway and the highway collapses. Right? And you watch that and you chuckle and you move on. I'm chuckling because I'm thinking about it and chuckling. Right? It's affected me while I'm on this stage. But you have this constant stream of just AI-generated brain rot that is now entering into, auntie and uncle WhatsApp chats. It's entering into Facebook groups. It's entering into everything that you see and everything that you interact with on the internet. Where now people are no longer able to sit and concentrate on anything. Recently I encountered a youth, he was 14, 15 years old, and he said that the Fellowship of the Ring is slow. Right? So when I watch this is The Lord of the Rings. It's an action-packed movie with actors and action and all of these things happening. He said, I can't watch Lord of the Rings, it's too slow. This is the stage that we've reached, that what was once considered action-packed media and would, fill you with, the energy is now considered slow. The youth, they say that middle schoolers, they cannot focus on something unless they have two things on the screen at the same time. Netflix now makes movies like brain rot movies. They say that the movie should not have too many complex scenes, because when people watch the movie, they are scrolling simultaneously at the same time, or texting, or doing some other thing on their phone. So you cannot have the movie be too advanced in plot. You have to have a very basic movie so that a person could glance back at the screen, pick up where the scene is, and go, oh, yeah, that's what's happening. This person is the enemy, and this person's the bad guy. Okay, back to my reel. Now, I bring this up, and this isn't all just related to the LLM, but the LLM, the AI, the transformer technology exacerbates and exemplifies this infinitely. Because what used to take someone a very long time to edit a video, to put together brain rot slop for you, used to take them hours and hours, days at a time. Now, a person can slap this together by the time they walk out of the room. 15-second video, oh look, Wayne was given a talk, ha, back to our Netflix show. Right? Oh look, the brain rot, this is so meta now that they'll make a reel of me giving a talk about brain rot and say that this is brain rot, and that in and of itself is the brain rot. People cannot focus for even short periods of time on essential information. Another problem that you have, a moral dilemma, in addition to, of course, the brain rot and this lack of focus, this lack of being able to concentrate and really study anything. People cannot read books. Right? This is like a nightmare for children now. You give them a book, oh my God. I ask many people in this room, when's the last time you read a book? And many people will say, last time I read a book was in high school. Astaghfirullah. The first word of this religion is Iqra. Right? That was revealed to Al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in the cave of Hira. Right? Iqra, read. Why was this revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? And this was to read, to understand more of your religion, to become a learned person that understands the rules of this religion, to understand who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, to know who His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is. Read. But now you can't do that, because your faculties of understanding have been weakened by all of these things around us. Now you have something, Sheikh AI, Sheikh ChatGPT. People in the past would go and study for years, decades at a time, underneath a sheikh, mashayikh, and we have this rich tradition of sanad within Ahl Sunnah, in which you would take from a person who would take from a person who would take from a person, all the way back to the companions and to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have this We have this idea of sanad. But now you have people who listen to durus on YouTube and now they are a mufti of the religion. But what happens when you do this? What happens when your information is filtered through the LLM and you're learning fiqh through an LLM? The modality through which you're understanding information is very one-dimensional. Let me explain what that means. When you sit in front of a sheikh, when you sit in front of a teacher, a person is not just learning information via the words that are communicated. No, they learn information via the adab of the teacher, the barakah of the gathering, the ilham that comes to them from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after spending 10 years, and then on the 10th year in the middle of the night they gain a fath. Oh, I now understand this mas'ala that I didn't understand 10 years ago. And it happened because of the culmination of knowledge that happened for 10 years through the modality of speech, presence, and being around your peers, the physical interaction that you had with the human being. When you read a physical book, what happens to the brain versus when you read it from a Kindle or when you read it from a screen? When you read it from a screen, many people use a Kindle or they read it on the internet. You use Shamila to read your Arabic texts, for example. What happens to the brain when you read like this versus when you read on a piece of paper? Because when you read on a piece of paper, there are multiple modalities of information processing that are happening. You might read a page on a piece of paper, you come to the end, you see a corner of the paper, and you wait, you flip it. The sound of that paper, you hear it, and your ears tell you, no, let me wait. Let me ponder upon this sentence that I'm seeing here. You see a smudge on the corner and you remember the last time I read this page was when I was drinking this tea and I smudged this corner. Let me go back to where I was on this other book on that same day and read that section as well. You see, the physical world, the human being is meant to interact with the physical. Right? The human being is not meant to interact with data. And this is really important to remember. And I'm saying this as a person who is an AI engineer. I work with these tools day in and day out. Right? I'm not saying this as someone who's a Maulvi in the village. But there is the importance of understanding what it means to be a human being. When you place all of your importance on digital information and getting information through the digital, you are not accessing the modality of what it means to be a human being. Right? Because even ChatGPT can tell you what the mas'ala says on page number 40 of Quduri. It can tell you that. If you feed Quduri is a text of fiqh in the Hanafi school. If you feed Quduri into ChatGPT, and you trained it on Quduri, and then you ask it, can you tell me what is the mas'ala of traveling? Will it give you the answer? Of course, it'll give you the answer. We don't need to be stupid and people of the village and say, no, you need a sheikh to give you the answer from Quduri. It can never do that. No, we acknowledge that it has the ability to do that. But that doesn't mean that information is simply through this modality of reading. And the proof of this is that the Prophet ﷺ, he is known by which name? Al-Ummi. Why is the name of the Prophet ﷺ Al-Ummi? Right? Al-Ummi is a person, they translate it in English as a person who does not have the capacity to read and write. It's also used in the books of fiqh if a person does not understand, is not able to read Quran or recite any part of the Quran in the salah, he is known as Al-Ummi in the salah. He's known as Ummi. Why is the Prophet ﷺ known as Al-Ummi? Why is this a praiseworthy characteristic? It's a praiseworthy characteristic because the modality of reading and writing is only one such modality, and it is a weak modality. The Prophet ﷺ doesn't need to read and write because he receives information directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You, me, weaker human beings, we have to read and we have to write in order to gain information from the world. To gain information from a book, we need this modality of reading and writing. The Prophet ﷺ doesn't require it. The proof that you need a human being is the proof of the Prophet ﷺ. If all you needed was the Quran, Allah Ta'ala would have sent you just the book. But Allah Ta'ala didn't send you a book. He didn't send you a book. He sent you the Prophet ﷺ, a human being, to transmit this knowledge from you, a human being who did not read and write. His name is Al-Ummi, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Now we move to children and AI, and I don't want to take too much time, and I also want to leave some time for Q&A. You have this video here, which I'm playing here, in which a little girl, she's crying over accidentally breaking her AI robot toy. And there's not sound here, I don't think. And she's crying about the loss of this robot toy. Now, are her tears insincere? Of course not. Of course not. Her tears are not insincere. The child is crying for real. Because they believed that this robot toy, this AI that they were interacting with, was truly their friend. And now that the robot has died, they're no longer able to converse with it, and they feel sad. So you'll see the robot talks to it. I just let it play out. Right, so you see the AI tells it, "Don't worry, child, I will be with you, watching over you." What does this do to the psyche of a child? When you instill this being that they believe is a being, that we know is just pattern recognition and mapping of what it has in its training data, and it's guessing something and telling you an answer. But when a child sees it, a child cannot know the difference. For a child, this is a real companion. Now, someone might say, well, what about when a child has a stuffed toy? Right? What about when a child might, for example, I have 3 daughters, and they all play with their stuffed toys, and there's a very special stuffed toy called Yuna, which is like a unicorn, right? Now, if I tell my daughters, when my daughter says that, okay, Yuna is now gone. See, the thing is, when a child plays pretend with a toy, the child, in reality, knows that they are playing pretend. The child doesn't actually believe that Yuna is real, even if they pretend that it's real. The child constructs a reality, places this created toy or figure into that reality, and then constructs a world with it. But see, the AI does the complete inverse and opposite of this. The AI constructs a reality, interacts with the child, and then places a child into the reality of the AI. So the AI talks, consoles, responds, and creates this emotional attachment with the child. And the child has no idea what's happening when this AI dies. It truly thinks, the child, he or she truly thinks the AI has died, their friend has died. And maybe they'll see them in Jannah. Astaghfirullah. Right? Like this is, you see that when we allow our children to even engage and access these things unfiltered and without control and without supervision, and we're not teaching our children and our community these things We are actually injecting into their mind principles and ideas of aqidah and the belief of what is real, what is false, what is life and what is death into their hearts at a very young age. You have new technology now. I forget what this website is called. I think it's called pickyourkid.com or pickyourchild.com. You have the ability now to select the genes of your children and have something called IVF Plus, where you can get IVF treatment and pick which genes you want in your child. Do you want your child to be smarter? Do you want them not to have autism? Do you want them to have a certain eye color, hair color? Do you want them to have breast cancer or no? These are the things from your DNA that you're combining. We'll do a test based on AI, and then we'll create the perfect child for you. And then we'll do an IVF treatment and insert that. What happens when this becomes a functional reality? Right now it's just a theoretical reality. This company's trying to do it, and they're doing all these ads, and they're trying to get investment and billions of dollars to make this happen, and they're starting some initial trials. But what happens when this is a reality? What happens when any parent can now go and select which child will be smarter, which child will have AIDS, which child will have autism? What kind of world do we create when we do that? And I think the last two things that I'm going to talk about is something that's really important and something that I'm seeing happening day to day across many of my social interactions and many interactions that I'm reading about and seeing about. And this might not happen more so for older people, because this technology has still not entered the fray of the older generation. But truth be told, it's very difficult now to ascertain whether you're speaking to a human being digitally or you're speaking to the AI. Recently, I was in a conversation interacting with someone, and the response I received, I knew it was written by a chatbot. And I said, if you're just going to send me the chatbot reply, then I could just talk to the chatbot myself. So then I sent a chatbot reply. And then eventually what happened is my chatbot was speaking to his chatbot. So I was never speaking to my friend, it was just the AI speaking to the other AI. When you're reading a comment on a YouTube video, a comment in a thread, we have ulama, who are posting ChatGPT written khutbas, fatawas, articles, essays. When we have the best of society being impacted by this stuff, what can we say about the worst of society? What happens when you offload your entire ability of cognitive thinking to an AI? When you no longer write, when you no longer use your creative capacity to write, and you hand all of that over to the AI, you become weak. The muscles of the brain, the muscles of writing, the muscles of communication, they weaken over time when you don't use them. You might think, I'm just using the AI to help me write this message that I don't want to write. Okay, sure, I use it too. I'm not going to lie. If there's some boring corporate meeting and I need to summarize the meeting, I use it, right? To help me prepare for this presentation, right? I'm not reading off of something, but to help me prepare, I use AI. This is what I want to talk about. Help me come up with a summary of points that I should hit. No problem. Nobody's saying don't use it as a tool to aid you as a human being in your cognitive capacity. But when you offload your intellect, your creativity, and your cognitive capacity to the machine, then you will get nothing back but a soulless reply. Well, you won't get anything back but a soulless creation. And so you'll see interactions that are now happening, even, for example, in marriage apps like Muzzmatch. They ask, swipe through, now we've created a representation of you, a digital AI representation of what your likes and dislikes are, and we'll match you to your AI digital representation of what their likes and dislikes are. You no longer communicate and have to deal with this arduous process of speaking with each other's families and doing all this stuff. We'll match the AIs and the AIs will deal with that. Well, guess what? Now nobody's getting married. Right? Now nobody's getting married. Great. Right? I recently saw a post where someone, Muslim, they said that somebody asked me, what am I looking for in a man? And they said, I don't know. So I went to ChatGPT and I said, what do I look for in a man? And so I sent that over to him. And he responded back and he said, did you write this off of ChatGPT? And, you find this funny, but this is happening more and more. More and more people are using ChatGPT to interact. You may be interacting with your friends and family members, and you have no idea that you're no longer interacting with them, but you're interacting with an AI. So what do we do? What do we do? I think the first step is a recognition that we have a problem. Right? A recognition that we as human beings and as Muslims, we have an amana to share to the world, to give da'wah to the world of what it means to be a human being. Right? Because we had the greatest of human beings come to us, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He taught us how to live. He taught us how to understand reality, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And we go back to the ulama. The ulama are not foolish. Right? Most people, when they think of the ulama, they think of some Maulvi in the village with a long beard. No. The ulama, they are people of intellect. There is a famous mas'ala in fiqh about wells. In Hanafi fiqh, if you ever study Hanafi fiqh, one of the first things they'll cover is what happens when a large animal falls into a well. Right, like a camel falls into a well, and you have to remove 200 buckets of water from the well. Now the ulama say that when you reach the 199th bucket, they ask a question: do the drops of najas that come off the bucket spoil the well again? They say no. Because when you reach the 200th bucket, they say no, the well is pure, the bucket is pure, the rope is pure. Why? Because there's a qaida we have that masail al-abar mabni ala ittiba' al-athar, that the rulings of wells are built upon the tradition. Because it's actually rationally impossible to purify a well if you simply use only the intellect. As soon as you pull out the first bucket of water that's najas, water droplets will fall down the bucket into the well and impurify it again. So now you have to pull out 200 more. The ulama are not stupid, they know this. They know this. This is why they have this qaida, that we take this from nas and we take this from the tradition, that once you pull out 200, that's pure. You don't need to worry about it. It's yakfi, it's enough. So what do we do about all of this stuff? Go back to the tradition. Go back to the ulama. The ulama have understood this tradition and they've understood how the Prophet ﷺ understood reality. The four madhahib of Ahl Sunnah are really an understanding of reality. How do you look at reality? And this is one thing that's really important for us to do. Go back to the tradition. The tradition helps us define how we understand reality. The last question, which is perhaps more important than what do I do about going back to the tradition, will I ever have a job again? And I recently I gave a khutbah at Rutgers, and some people knew about my background, and almost all of the students there were CS students. They came to me and they said, Brother Moin, what do we do about jobs? Are we going to have jobs anymore? Truth be told, it depends on the field, right? It depends on the field. There are certain fields which weren't really jobs to begin with, right? Most of us don't really do jobs that are important to begin with. right? So these corporate jobs where you were moving something from one spreadsheet to another spreadsheet so that you could tell the product manager of the scrum master that the meeting was 15 minutes late, or that you need to, move the ticket on the Jira board. This is not a job to begin with. So if this job goes away, it was only created like 30 years ago to begin with. Do you think 100 years ago farmers in Lebanon were moving tickets on a Jira board? No, they weren't. The world still functioned and the world still operated. Will the AI lead to a loss of dumb jobs? Absolutely. So if you're stuck in this world still, that we're going to adapt and the AI will just create more jobs, and I'm sorry, really, really sorry to tell you. It might create some jobs that are really dumb for a short period of time until enterprises and people catch up. Like right now, I'm an AI engineer. I work with AI tooling and we're creating agents. And for the next 10 years, I'm sure we're going to be creating this agent and that agent, and another company is going to want to spin up its own platform. This will be around for a short period of time. But eventually the AI will get good enough that some of these dumb jobs will go away. So we as humanity will have to then answer the question, what does it mean to even live and be human beings? For the Muslim, the answer is simple. Worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is the best gift that could be given to a Muslim but to be fed, given a roof over their head, and told worship Allah, you don't need to do anything else? Allahu Akbar. You're getting fed, you worship Allah, you send your salawat on the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, khalas, you don't need to do anything else. If you're focusing your attention on what am I going to do about my degree? Look, if you're in college, I would say go to community college, spend a couple of years, wait to see what the industry does, and I'm sure there will be some jobs around that you can plug into. I'm not saying that don't do anything, I'm not saying don't go to school. We still have to live in reality, we still have to operate in reality. But one is be aware of these things, know what your family is engaging with, what your children are engaging with, and become a steward of this religion where you learn the tradition of this religion and understand what reality is, and understand what the Prophet ﷺ taught us. And so I leave you with that, and I'll close with that. أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت وأستغفرك وأتوب إليك والأصل إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Any questions?